So if you look at the campus interview process goes through, so essentially every company picks up a set of colleges which they cater to, and that might be basically based on various factors, and it also depends if the onus is on colleges to sell to the right companies. So now most of the colleges has a placement cell, and there is a placement officers who essentially markets the college and makes it attractive for companies to come in. So once there is a pool of colleges, and then there is a huge number of people to select from. So what invariably you end up doing is you have to draw a line somewhere, and the first basic line you draw is about saying that I would not interview people below a certain marks. That's where the mark becomes very important, because it acts as an entry barrier or for you to get selected into the interview pool itself. After that, you start looking at various aspects, right? Once you have the basic criteria satisfied, which is the marks, then you start looking at how good a guy is, basically, because every organizations want to get guys who are essentially holistic in their perspective, who have right attitude, right aptitude, and probably ability and willingness to learn new skills. And these are primarily the things which are used into assess the ability of each individual which we interview. There are various ways you would invariably do it. You give by giving attitude test, aptitude test, the skill test, and then following it up with group discussions and personal interviews. But fundamentally, the understanding is to assess the person's attitude, aptitude, and willingness to learn and work as part of the team.
But the main thing you want to check for is learning ability. And that is the thing that everyone should ideally focus on, because you can't come in with all the knowledge that you need for a corporate role. So are you able to learn? Are you willing to learn? Is what I would check for.
So help us understand a little bit of what do you try to assess in a group discussion? Are you looking for the most outspoken person, or what is the skill set that is being looked at?
I would say 2 to 3 things. One is, yes, if a person can communicate. Sometimes there is chaos in the GDs, but can the person communicate? Is the person articulate enough? These are 2 different things. Communication, everybody feels, is all about English. That's not the end of it. Are you articulate enough? Can you really get your point across? Can you express yourself? Sometimes it gets drowned in a lot of voices, the noise around in the GD. But it's not about who starts first, who ends first. These are obviously taught to everybody that either you start first or you end first because you get noticed. Yes, it makes a lasting impression. But are you articulate enough during the course of the GD? And that tells you that, okay, this person can express himself. The second thing is how much are you thinking about the content? So that part of it, again, you don't need to overshout others and make yourself heard on that point. It's about if you have understood the content and if you can talk about it, that's great.
I'll go a little traditional on that, and I will still say marks is really required. I don't want to stand up right now and say no, it's not required. Yes, it is required, because that'll help the student to be focused on what he's studying. But at the same time, that's not the only thing.
I think it is important, essentially, basically, because in a country like India, we are highly populated countries, right? And at some point, we can't go and interview the best candidates at any point of time just by looking at other factors. You need a basic criteria, which will essentially act not as a selection criteria, but a filtering criteria. So the marks actually makes a important aspect in trying to figure out from where you narrow down your search. And in that respect, it is important for you to be in getting good marks if you are planning something to be as a part of a industry, or you are being part of a company which you aspire to be. But if you are on your own, and if you want to plan to do something on your own, I don't think marks makes much of a sense.
I don't think everybody should look for the scoring perfect marks. Actually, instead of that, they should look at their knowledge, actually how best they are expanding it. Just take my example. If I'm looking at a guy who has a 60% score and he has done 3 projects in Python or any other language, C++ or whatever it is, I am more interested in going for that guy than going for a 90% guy without doing all these things actually, right? So marks is not the only thing. It is probably the only thing today to get into the get into the second round of the the whole hiring process. When you start going to the companies, product companies directly, and I look at his experience and call him for the interview, that's where these things becomes more and more critical, and I want him to, I don't look at marks at all at that point of time, right? It is not about marks, it's about the experience, it's about what he has done.
Attitude, very important, because one of my colleague who's HR director of another company was telling me that he had to walk out of a premier institution because of the attitude problem, because he was like, when he was technically brilliant, but when it comes to the way he put him across, he is like, who's this guy, sir? I don't even care. So I don't need a player like that. I need a player who's ready to take fresh challenges, ready to accept things, ready to understand things, ready to learn new things. So even if the guy is technically perfect, communication wise perfect, if his attitude is not right, it will not be possible to hire him, because that may not be the right fit in the team.
The most important thing according to me is the attitude. The attitude to learn. I think it's not just about saying yes or no to everything. Some people feel if I say yes, that's good, which is probably the predominant attitude, which is okay because you're in college, you're looking at companies coming in. Obviously, you're a little overwhelmed. Some people try to break away from the mold, but again, at the end of the day, it's the attitude to learn, attitude to be open-minded. I think these two things are the most, the biggest assets of a candidate. And whenever we interview, we look at these attributes, and within a few questions, you are able to generally ascertain what kind of attitude the candidate possesses. So this is one of the important things. At that point in time, don't get kind of hung up on a product or a services company, but try and see how you can grow. Yes, you need to learn technically. Yes, you need to learn functionally. You may not get everything on day one, but what is it that your goal is, how you can help the company as well as help yourself.